We dated in secret for about a year and then got engaged through another whole turn of events, a community that both of us were part of that had cult-like elements to it. And so it was a little bit of a stink, as they say, a little bit of a scandal.
Hello and welcome back to this channel. My name is Frida Wiesel, and this channel explores topics that interest me, like Judaism, New York City, and oftentimes Hasidic Judaism, which is the community that I come from. I recently came across Bruchi Moskowitz on social media. Her posts were fascinating, presented in Hasidic Yiddish, and offering commentary on psychedelics for therapeutic use from Bruchi's perspective as a licensed clinical social worker. I'll play a few seconds of that here.
Noch a psychedelic ceremony, any psychedelic, any medicine, is zayir normal, zu haben a crash. So psychedelics arbeiten auf alle meine Wegen. Sie arbeiten in der Consciousness, sie arbeiten in der Moyach, sie arbeiten in der Gif. Jetzt der Heilig von Psychedelics, was arbeitet in der Moyach, in the actual cells von der Moyach, von der Brain, sind sehr stark. Es ist ein starker Prozess, was geschieht. Und nachdem, was alle meine Hormones und Neurotransmitters werden aufgeweckt auf sehr starker Weg, was geschieht, kamat eibig nachdem, ist, als der ganze Moyach geht a exhale, also jetzt, wenn der Moyach, eine von den größten Systems in the body, macht a exhale, kann geschehen für 2-3 Tage, vielleicht ein bisschen länger, als man fühlt down.
The whole intersection of Hasidism and psychedelics totally fascinates me, as does Bruchi's own amazing story. And so I'm so glad to talk to her today. Welcome, Bruchi.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good.
Good. I'm so happy to get to talk. I have so many questions. Before we get to psychedelics, which I know nothing about, so we're going to start from the very beginning, I really would love to hear a little bit about your own story, because you, like me, grew up in Kiryas Joel. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to tell me a little more about that?
Sure. So it's obviously a very broad question. Obviously, for the early part of my life, it wasn't a thing. It was like, this is where I live. This is what I do. This is how we live. This is what the community is like. It was only as I got a little bit older and hit teenage years that there was even the concept that there's other kinds of life, other kinds of living.
Did you come from a large family?
Yeah, I have 8 siblings altogether. We're 6 girls and 3 boys.
How many cousins?
Oh, countless. On my father's side, I don't know the count. On my mother's side, it's definitely more than 50. Yeah, which is the norm in Kiryas Joel and in just Hasidic families in general.
What would you describe, like, your childhood? Was it happy? Was it difficult?
So it really depends on which perspective I'm looking at it from. If I look at it from the perspective of putting together all the factors, it might objectively definitely come across as, at the very least, complex.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I think of myself at all the ages and all the stages, there's certainly a very strong mental fortitude that was there the whole time, that allowed for the journey to be just that, a journey with ups and downs and highs and lows. Like, I would say I was living life from the start.
Yeah.
And I lived and questioned and wondered and was seeking and was creating and was wondering.
What were you creating?
Whatever I could. I was doing a lot of writing, a lot of art, creating concepts, ideas in my head, potential future dreams. So that was there the whole time. I don't know. I mean, now I understand it comes from source and was always there, but I think it's a real gift to know that I was tapped into it, I think, the whole time. So from that perspective, even looking at all the factors that were very complex and very layered, that was the landscape of the first years of my life.
Who was the closest person to you in the first years of your life up until young adulthood?
Me.
You?
Yeah. I made friends with myself at an early age.
What kind of friend are you to yourself?
Fun, playful, interested in nature. I enjoy taking walks. I'm curious, see, oh, there's all these hills, and it's a nice landscape, physical landscape as well. So there were certain things I remember when I would walk, let's say to school, I'd go up a hill and then down. And at one point, right at going down the hill, there was this thing in the distance, and I would make up, what is it? Is it a castle? Is it this? I would just have fun with me. That's such a gift.
Yeah. Did you daydream in school as well?
At times, I was also very social in school, had a lot of friends, had a great time in school. For the most part, I really enjoyed school, both the learning and the social stuff. The social stuff, yeah, it was good.
Was home also, can I ask, a place that was similarly positive for you?
Again, more driven from me.
Mm.
Home was definitely more work than school for many reasons.
Physical
Different things
work, literal work, or work internally?
internally, and the physical work was, I mean, I was the oldest girl of, a family of, I had two older brothers, but I was the oldest girl, so I got to do a lot of physical cooking, cleaning, helping to put the kids to sleep, bathing the kids, like all of that stuff was second nature, and I grew up with it from when I was really, really young. But that didn't feel like work. It just felt like this is what we do. Like any kids in my class who had younger siblings would not be a stranger to this. Like, of course, this you're a big girl, you help. But again, I think a lot of this is in hindsight because living through the family dynamics that existed in my family home, at the time, I don't think it felt like work. It was like getting through. And it got more intense as I got older and as I entered my teenage years and young adulthood. It came to a head. It had to have that explosion and
Mm.
allow the pieces to fall where they have, which was also a gift. But school was a safe zone. I knew what to do, did well in school, had friends, kept myself busy.
You went to Baisirchel, right?
Yes,
Can I ask how old you are?
I'm 29.
Wow, you're a baby. Uh-huh. So Baisirchel and Bakertown, essentially, the big giant school with like how many grades were there? How many girls in your age in Baisirchel at your time?
Oh, it was huge. At least 200 my age. And the younger grades already at the time had double or like it was ever expanding. There was always a new building going up.
Would it be fair to say you were like a dreamer or a seeker? How would you describe your personality?
Awake.
Awake?
Yeah,
Good.
awake. Aware, looking around, wondering
Wondering what?
about anything. For me, especially now as a child therapist, I know that it's so natural and inborn. So I respect myself a lot for staying connected to that. But every child has a scientist mind, wanting,
Yeah.
wondering. And for me, it was also always about hearing the perspectives that were shared in school as one perspective. For me,
Uh-huh.
it felt very comfortable to say, like, oh, this is interesting. Like, this is cool. This is nice. I don't know if this is it, but it's nice. So I think that openness really allowed me to take in what landed and to leave whatever didn't land gently on the table. I didn't have to smash it or throw it in the trash. I could just be like, oh, this probably works for some people.
Yeah.
Maybe not for me.
Can you describe your family status? Like, is your family very religious or very, um, like, would you say, if you're comfortable talking about, like, I'm trying to place you in the scheme of Curious Joel, since obviously I know Curious Joel, and there are all sorts of different families, and that affects not only the experience of the home life, but also your place in Curious Joel. I'm just trying to get a little bit of a sense of who little Brookie and Curious Joel was.
Sure. So, yeah, to your point, there's a lot of diversity in Curiosio that's not always represented.
Yeah.
Not just one type of person. And going to school, right? I got to see all different types of family vibes, so to speak. And you could group people together So my family, I would say my father's side is very strong, Satmar, Rabbi Yoel, like the Grand Rabbi, like very connected to him, his teachings. That's my father's family. My father was a bit more out there. So like, let's say he would wear a white shirt without his tzitzis on top. His
I
tzitzis would be
see.
underneath,
Under.
or he would put his pious up throughout the week rather than leave it down. He would cut his mustache. Like these nuances are to someone who's not in the community may not get it, but in the community, these are these little markers that kind of group you somewhere. And my mother's side of the family is not Satmar, like originally. Her father was on a journey of finding Hasidus in his own way, and my mother and her siblings each found their own path. And when my mother married my father, I think she by default adopted Satmar as okay, it's a thing. Growing up, the first few years of my life, I lived in Monsey, where my mother grew up. And then when I was 5, we moved to Kiryas Yoel, which is still very much in the formative years. And that became kind of part of our family identity. Like, this is where we are, this is where we live. I had both the strong Satmar roots from my father and also more English speaking in the house and more open-mindedness that came through my mother. So for me, what the experience was like is that while I could connect to all things Satmar, I also had in my DNA openings to other things.
Uh-huh.
Like, okay, you could look here, you could look there.
Like, what does here or there mean?
When I wanted to pursue college, for example, I knew that since I was 11 or 12. I was like, I'm going to be a therapist. I'm going to do this. So instead of it being shut down, it was very supported. It's like, yeah, of course you could do it.
Oh, I
My
see.
father even pushed me. He's like, do you want to become a doctor? Do you want to do, like, you could do anything. So I don't know if that would necessarily be the normative response that you would get in Kiryas Yoel. A girl saying, oh, like when I finish high school, I want to go to college. Maybe today
Probably
it's,
not.
yeah, but back then it certainly wasn't a given. But for me, it was comfortable to express it. It was well received. As long as I was living at home, my father paid for college courses and was very supportive. So that's an example of something that in some ways is an outcome of this interesting combination. That's not pure, complete, very from closed family in Satmar. It's more rooted in Satmar, and also there's opportunities and options that maybe other kids didn't have.
Were there things besides going to college that you can name that you were able to do, like maybe read things or go places that was not typical for a girl in your class?
Yeah, there were some things I did secretly, right? Like smuggling into my parents' closet and finding their DVD player and DVDs, right? So that
Oh,
was
it's so fun.
hidden from me, but I
What
found it.
movies did they have?
I watched one movie that was deeply traumatizing.
Oh
It was
no.
about, I did not grow up with anything on a screen or a TV. And then I'm watching this movie. It was just like so exciting. Like I grabbed the DVD and grabbed the DVD player. And it turned out to be this chaotic story about killing and murder. And I was like, oh, yeah,
I
that's not.
relate. I had a similar experience with the movie Gangs of New York. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's so violent. It was like I knew Leonardo DiCaprio from a different thing, so I didn't realize how violent
Really?
movies can get.
Yeah. And to have none of that in my lived experience until then, it's like, what is this? And my father did catch me with it, and he had a very like fair point, because I said, you can't really say anything. I got it from your closet. His answer was, listen, it's different for a 40-year-old man to watch a movie here and there than for a 13, 14-year-old girl with a very forming brain to
Yeah,
watch things like this. So fair point. As an
yeah.
adult today, I don't have a TV in my home. I don't watch a lot of movies. I do if it's relevant and important. On a plane, I'll watch a movie sometimes, but things like that are just very like they stick, you know? So things like that would be ways that I would, lots of ways of seeking and going to Walmart and buying like a CD of Goyish music, like Justin Bieber or something like that. So scandalous. And it's like, okay, cute. But even the fact that I was the type of girl that was able to go to Walmart with a friend, whether my parents loved it or hated it or somewhere in between, there was still that option. Whereas a lot of other kids in my class did not. It was just unheard of. It's like, no, you're not going in a taxi and going to Walmart. It's just a no. So I don't know if that was due to my insistence or their openness, my parents' openness, but there were things that were just a little bit more open.
By the way, one of the things you do is you play this instrument. What's it called?
The handpan?
The handpan. And you have these really zen videos on Instagram where you play it. I'm going to play here. Did you learn at all how to play instruments in your childhood?
Yeah, so guitar was the first one. And when I asked for a guitar, my parents got me an electric guitar first. That's what I wanted. So I would play for hours, just lead, like one string at a time, and make different sounds and play along with different songs that I liked. And then at some point, I was maybe 16 or 17, my father gifted me an acoustic guitar also, which I still have to this day. So those were my first instruments. My mother was always very musical. My father dabbles in music here and there. But there was consistently an instrument in the house.
It was not forbidden or hidden?
No.
No. What was the approach to music? What was like the connection to music, or was it an ambition to become a performer?
I mean, I think at the time it was just something I really wanted to do in the moment. And in hindsight, I understand it was an important part of allowing myself to express things that didn't have words,
Yeah.
just to play. When you're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, like how do you play? When do you get to play? You're sitting in school, you're coming home, you're helping your parents. So that is like an outlet of really playing. And I would sit with that guitar for hours. Hours. Such a safe haven. And yeah, the fact that it was gifted to me by my parents was also meaningful to me. And then as the years went on, I've accumulated a lot of different instruments, and just music is such an important part of my life.
Was God an important part of your childhood or
Oh,
faith?
yeah. Yeah.
How so?
Yeah. More than the faith that was taught, I think it was the faith that was inborn from a very, very young age. I knew that I could talk to God. I knew that I could write to God. When we learned the Shemona Esrei prayers, which is the standing prayers with the 18 brachos, and my teacher told us that there's a certain point in which you can pause and you can speak in your own language. I was like, this is the coolest thing. And I would spend minutes upon minutes praying and speaking, and it was just so nice. It's like in my sitter, like in my zone, and just communicating. Yeah, and when I was going through tough times or things related to family or in myself, I went through a phase where I had like OCD type symptoms, and there wasn't really, it wasn't seen, it wasn't noticed, but I turned to God, and I would write it on a paper, and I would read it. And I would read it at night before going to sleep, and it helped. And that just continued progressing, and more 14, 15, somewhere around that age. I started reading more Jewish texts. I found Breslov teachings that were very similar to how I experienced God myself, about God being a loving God and you can talk to God and like a friend. And I was like, yeah, this resonates. It's also all about music and being happy itself is a huge mitzvah. Like if you're completely sad because you can't be perfect as a Jew, like you're kind of doing it wrong. So I was like, this resonates. This is really nice. So that catapulted that inborn faith to a whole new level. Because I was like, wow, there's a whole bunch of people who get it. It's not just me alone with this kind of relationship with God that's maybe outside of what is taught in school. It's just very me.
I should explain Breslov is a Hasidic group that's like there's Satmar, which is the largest today. Breslov, is it fair to say it's more hippie? Because that's my very layman's term for the Breslov group.
Yeah. If we bring psychedelics into it, it's psychedelics without the psychedelics. It's like it's a very psychedelic space. It's transcendental. It allows
Mm.
us to reconnect. And it's the rabbi who wrote the teachings was, from what I understand in reading his teachings, was connected in a certain way that was very na'im, very sweet, very gentle and powerful at the same time. So for me, that was just amazing.
How did you find his teaching?
So in my father's bookshelf, there was a little book that was in Yiddish, because they have these letters and answers and different teachings that were translated to Yiddish. And I read
Originally
it.
Hebrew.
So I don't know if this was even an original text by him or one of the current Breslov rabbis or something like that, but it clearly dated back to him. Like it spoke of his teachings. So that just opened up a whole space. Like, oh, there's a world here that feels very nice and comforting and welcoming.
Did romance play a role in your teenage years?
Yes, absolutely. I had my first crush at 11.
On a
My
boy or a girl?
a boy, my mother's friend's son. They lived in England. We lived here. They came for my brother's bar mitzvah, and we had the cutest little
Aw,
thing. So there was that. We would speak on the phone sometimes. And even that, like, my mother would know I'm speaking to him on the phone here and there. It wasn't like this celebrated thing, but if my mother would talk to her friend, they'd be like, "Oh, is he home? Like, can we talk for a few minutes?" And then, yeah, there was one other crush that I had, also a boy in the community. That was also 14, 15. And then by the time I was 16, I had graduated high school, and then entered more of the no one's telling me what to do. Um, you're not going to just get me engaged to whoever you want through a matchmaker. Like, no. And that's where I went more into like being open to actually like the dangerous boys in Curious Isle. And yeah, had myself a little phase of when I look back, I'm like, yeah, Shafila, like you were 16, 17. Ugh, I just want to protect her. But she was always good, always protected, always with angels, I think. But there was definitely a journey that include, and I'm grateful in terms of my development that it did have the option of including romance or crushes or boys, because it's also not a given that it's actually played out and happening. A lot of girls may feel it and think it, but to actually have the opportunity and speak to a boy and do this or do that, smoke a cigarette, had a tiny puff of weed with his boy at 16. It did nothing. Like I didn't smoke weed again until I was, I think, 24. And then it was a ceremonious, it was like planned, it was more intentional.
intentional.
Yeah, but all of these things were important when I think of just the growing up process, coming of age. I think of all of it fondly.
Did you not worry that your reputation is going to be destroyed or your siblings are going to have a hard time getting married if you're sneaking around with boys?
So I tried really hard to care, but I just didn't.
I love that.
No, for real. Like I maybe should have cared. The community sent someone to let me know that, if you do this, exactly that, your siblings won't get married and this and this and this and that. You won't, who knows what might happen. We might have to send you and your whole family out of Curious Isle. It didn't hit. it just didn't hit. And in terms of my reputation, I think I did a pretty good job throughout all of my years to stand out enough that to almost say, you don't own my reputation, I do. And if
Mm.
it's quote unquote ruined, I did it myself.
Mm.
So it's like, okay.
When you got married, right? You got married in the community. Was it through a matchmaker in the end?
No,
Oh no.
no. It was through a beautiful, miraculous story. It's uh,
Tell us.
incredible, incredible how my former husband and I met. I don't know if I want to get into all the details. To me, it feels like a very sacred story, but it was
Only
a,
what you're comfortable.
yeah, it was a wild turn of events that got us in touch in the first place. And then we chatted and continued talking. And then at some point, sent photos to each other like, oh, wow, who are you and who are you? And then we both had a wedding. His friend was getting married to my friend's sister. So I was like, oh my gosh, so are you going to be in Curious? We're finally going to meet for the first time. And we did. It was the cutest thing. And we dated in
Did you meet
secret.
at the partition of the wedding?
No, no, you can't. Like, that's only for Hassan and Kala, for like people who
Oh,
are already engaged to each other. No, we met in back of one of the school buildings. And
ooh,
I was like, I know a
rendezvous.
spot, follow me. Yeah. And it was really, really sweet and cute. And just both of us were so good to each other, so good to each other from the start. And yeah, we dated in secret for about a year and then got engaged through another whole turn of events. And then
Were
we
your
were married.
parents okay with that?
They kind of had to be. The way the engagement happened was also not fully in my or his control. I mean, I don't think it ever is. It's very much from God. But the way it happened was also mixed in with a community that both of us were part of that had cult-like elements to it. And so it was a little bit of a stink, as they say, a little bit of a scandal.
Mm.
Um, but I think both of us had this attitude of we have each other. Like it doesn't matter what people say, what people think. We're really good with it. Like again, we didn't choose to care too much about the people, the community, at least during that part of our lives. And then got married. We were together for 6 years. And then when it came time to part ways, also through a beautiful journey of really getting clear with ourselves and with each other of like we're very young, we're 18 years old, looking ahead at life. What do I want? What do I envision? What do you want? What do you envision? And then really seeing, is this an alignment for life, or were we partners to help each other through this particular phase, this particular journey, helping each other come through our childhood homes and into adulthood? And yeah, the beautiful ceremony of a get, of a divorce, was to me a real healing of the masculine experience growing up. Because essentially, in the room with getting the get, it's myself as the woman and a bunch of men.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who was my husband at the time, and then this person, and that is all these legal requirements. So to feel and experience this beautiful procedure and ceremony happening essentially just for me, to gift me that ticket or that pathway or that opening to live your life the way it resonates in truth for you. You're not trapped, you're not kept here, you're safe. You know, I trust in you to go forth and make the decisions that work for you. So there's a deep, deep healing that happened in that process.
Mhm.
And then
Did he ever give you a hard time with getting the get?
never, never. No, so much love and respect, kindness. I mean, I say if anyone has to go through a divorce, I'd say use that as the model. So real and MS and real continuous love to the end and after. Just a blessing, for real.
Are you still in touch with him?
No,
No.
on his end, there was more of a return to, from what I understand, I don't know obviously much about his life, but the certain traditions were more important to him, traditional ways of living, than they are to me. I mean, most humans essentially have the same end goal, to feel good, to feel happy with their lives. But the pathway that we saw to it just turned out to be very different.
Yeah.
And so, in that way of living, there is not a connection with, like, there's no kids involved, there's no need to maintain a friendship. There's a real separation, a real release, a real surrender, a real returning of, if the relationship had a neshama, returning it to God. Saying, like,
Mm.
this is yours, you gifted it to us, and you have
And
taken it
neshama
back.
is the soul.
Yeah, so like almost as if the relationship had a soul, to let it return and ascend back to God, to Creator, to Source, and to say, you've given it to us, and now you have taken it, and thank you.
That's beautiful. So your own journey then, you part ways. I just want to hear a little bit about where you're now. Are you still in the community? Are you but how would you describe your life since that? I'm guessing it's not too long ago since you were married for 6 years. So, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that question is always an interesting one. In the community, out of the community. The community lives in me
Mm,
in a sense, and also doesn't. The love for the community lives in me and also is sometimes irrelevant.
mm,
For me, there never had to be a stark separation or a leaving or a returning. It's like graduating to whatever is next for me, which at different eras over the past couple of years meant different things. Whether it was, focusing more on travel, focusing more on my work, focusing more on, well, where do I really want to live in the world, not in the community or out of the community, and where do I genuinely want to settle and live, and which air do I want to breathe? What do I want to see when I wake up? And I think because for me, the community was never the biggest part of my identity, it wasn't that big of a deal to go here, go there. And what I find time and time again is wherever I go, my community is there. My community shows up. So at this point in time, I would say my own circle of community includes several people from childhood, and several people from my time in Brooklyn, and several people from my time in the other place in Brooklyn, and several people from my time in starting to make my way to Israel, several people from my travels all over the world before moving to Israel, then several people from this place in Israel and that place. So what I find again and again really is that community reveals itself. Community to me is not location dependent. So in Kiryas Yael, there may be a lot of people who I don't know as a part of my community because they never were. And then there may be many people who, when I go back there, it's like, yeah, this is my community. And when I see those people, it's like, yeah, you have been a part of my community. You showed up for me this way or that way, or I got to show up for you. We were actually in community with each other. So for me, it's not location dependent. It's a state of mind, and that has never left.
Speaking of community, I hope it's okay if I bring this up because I feel like people will want to hear. If you don't want to talk about it, just say so. You mentioned in passing that you were like involved in like a cult-like thing. Are you comfortable talking about what you meant?
Sure.
What does that mean? What were you involved with?
So it has progressed since I have left, so I can't speak to it today. When I first got connected to Breslov, there was a community that I got connected to first, a subgroup in Breslov that at the time provided a lot of community, right? Like connection and a circle around you. And almost this energy of we know what we're doing and how we're doing it, and if anyone thinks differently, like it's on them, like we know and we get it. So that circle that I think as an older teenager I was really getting in touch with. It works off of the anger that older teenagers have towards everything. It's a normal developmental stage to feel angry at the system and the parents and this and that. Very normal. So that part of me found a very comfortable place in that group. Different things emerged. This was during the time that I was dating my former husband, and the nature in which it's complex because with things like this, it's a very nuanced experience. So things that could seem on the surface like fine, when everything is put together in the vibration, in the energy, in the experience, it's like you know it if you've been there.
Uh-huh.
To explain and describe like what was cult-like about it and what was the issue and what made it a cult and is it, yeah, if anyone's read anything about cult psychology, it's very nuanced. It's very nuanced. So for me, I would say it was the experience of being kind of involved, but always just like I did when I was a kid in school. Like, well, I hear this perspective. It's not everything. I hear it. So that was very helpful to me. And eventually, there was a breaking point between myself and the leading rabbi of that group, who called me out publicly for something, for supporting a woman who was going through something really intense and kind of shaming me for it. And after that, it was just so clear to me. It was like, I don't need to even be a part of this group in any capacity. And it was with great ease that I just said, I'm out,
Mm.
you know,
A
which is
lot of
not the
people,
experience for everyone.
I get it, that kind of you wake up and you're like, I see what this is. A lot of people, it's interesting that a lot of people will say that Curious Joel is a cult, for instance, but you don't use that kind of language for Curious Joel.
Hmm.
Do you see this as what you went through in this Breslov subgroup to be different from Curious Joel?
Yeah, to me it was. To me it was. I think a big part of it was the closeness of the leading rabbi to
Mhm.
the constituents. I don't know if I've ever come face to face with the rabbi in Kirisio.
I know I think I met the rabbi in Curious Joel once. Like it's very,
Yeah.
yeah,
Again, but there may be people who do have a cult-like experience in Kirisio. I wouldn't be able to deny that. Like
of course, yeah.
it's
I hear
a
what you're
very big
saying.
possibility, but the closeness of the rabbi to the constituents and the very clearly being told we do this and we do that and we do this and we do that with immediate shaming if you don't. Again, there are things like that in Kirisio as well. The gift of my experience in Kirisio was these things were like cute. They didn't hit where it hurt for me. Whereas another person can have the same experience and it really hits where it hurts, and it's just not the same experience at all. It's almost like we didn't grow up in the same place.
I so understand what you're saying. But it seems that in Breslov you did have that experience where it hit. You opened yourself up, you connected, and then it hit where it
Hmm.
hurt. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. You now live in Israel?
Yeah.
Is that like where you think you're making life, or are you still wandering and searching?
I make a life wherever I am at every moment.
Mhm.
So we say this whole earth experience is quite temporary. So in this moment I'm there and I'm deeply, deeply grateful. It's yeah, it's almost surreal and yet a very real experience, the realist.
Where in Israel?
So currently I live in the north. I say it's between Nahariya and Lebanon. It's really nice, a big stretch of mountains, very organic living with the earth.
Do you have people there?
There are people, yeah, different people stake some land on a mountain, build a yurt or a little cabin.
Is there community?
Again, I always have community when I need it. So wherever I am, community exists. I also like looking for the shul wherever I am. And in Israel, like you'll find a shul somewhere. So in this place, there is a Chabad shul that I've gone to a couple of times. So that's fun, just seeing different people. But again, community is a state of being for me. I can feel community when a few stray dogs walk by me and my dog and there's a moment and they're fighting for a second and then kind of stand up straight and make a command and they listen and I'm like, okay, in this moment this is the community. And then I go to the grocery store and there's a few people there, people that I've seen, and it's like, oh my gosh, hi, and how have you been? And oh, I heard your daughter had a baby. When is the thing? Da da da. Boom, that's a moment of community. So it's not something that like I need to know exists here and where do we meet and when do we go and what do we do. For me, it's been becoming more of a way of living.
I hear that. One of the things I hear the most often from people about leaving the Hasidic communities. Don't you miss the community? Or they will say, the one nice thing is you have community. And I've always thought, community can be very tight, and sometimes that's too much. I always felt I needed a looser community than like this very tight community where people come running the moment you have a medical issue. It's beautiful, but it's also, for me, it's like too much. It's so suffocating. It has like that other side of like loose community always resonated with me. But there's that danger in loose community that you forget each other. It's just my thoughts about community, which is something I think about a lot because now that I think I'm at a distance, I can see the beauty of community, of intense community, much more clearly because I'm out of it and I don't see the bad side of the gossip and the intensity. But I also can understand what you're saying about community, which I find very beautiful. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of a sense of who you are. I feel like you come through so colorfully in your words and you're so poetic. Um, just to wrap up your own like bio here, like do you still keep in touch with your family? Can I ask about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh,
Family. I mean, they're the biggest original teachers, I think, in my life. All the characters, and it's a big family, so different levels of closeness with different people. And yeah, it's always a choice, a decision. Like
mm,
for me on my end, it's not, are they in touch with me? Am I the victim? No, it's if this is important to me, it's on me to keep it going the way I'd like, to keep it
mm.
alive, to keep it active. So yeah.
Tell me a little bit, start from the beginning because I know nothing. What is psychedelic treatment and a little bit about how about the people you're speaking a Yiddish to about this.
Well, start from the beginning. If I would really start from the beginning, I would say that whoever's on planet Earth knows what a psychedelic is. Why? Because essentially, from some spiritual perspectives, living on Earth is a psychedelic experience. What does that mean? It's you're in an altered state of consciousness and open to learning lessons. So if you're deeply spiritual or even just a little spiritual, you may know that this human that we're in right now is not the end all be all, that we have, whether it's a soul or consciousness or a connection to source, something beyond this present moment, something beyond this lived life, this physical world. And we are here for a couple of years to journey, to learn, to grow, to expand, to work through traumas, and then we go back. So essentially, this idea of coming to Earth, it's almost as if a couple of souls are crowded around and they're like, okay, I hear this group just did the psychedelic called Earth, this group of souls, and they came back and look at this experience they had. Oh my gosh, they said, and now they said they're eating animals now during the journey, and now they're doing this and doing sacrifices. As the eras go on, you're learning. And now this group that came back from the psychedelic called Earth, they said that it's no longer the ice ages, but now it's the this ages, right? They kept reporting, and souls keep having the opportunity to take the psychedelic called Earth and basically go to sleep and trip out for 70, 80, 90, 100, 120 years and live in this physical universe and learn and work through and purge and all of the things that we do in a psychedelic ceremony. Essentially, we're also doing it on planet Earth. So for me, as I'm a psychotherapist that works with psychedelics near me, I don't serve psychedelic medicine, but I work with the preparation and integration. I have a lot of colleagues who do serve the medicine. So that whole field, for me, it's a very, very powerful and helpful field. I love the advent of psychedelic medicine and my personal experience with it as well, which I'll talk about in a moment. What I find time and time again is it brings me back to I am already in a psychedelic experience. I'm actually living it as we speak. I'm going to sleep, waking up, eating food, doing work, doing things I'm passionate about, learning things, having relationships, having experiences, and this is the journey. Sometimes we crave a reminder. So with psychedelic medicines, we get the opportunity to allow our consciousness to be altered further to almost remind us what else exists beyond the current reality. So the psychedelics are a little doorway out of this psychedelic experience called Earth that allow us to get a glimpse of what else is there, what wisdom exists for me that is always accessible to me, but that because I'm in the psychedelic of Earth, I don't know. I'm asleep. I'm asleep. I don't know that this wisdom exists for me. So it's very much something that pushes away veils, confusion. Different medicines are often used for different things in the psychedelic field, but it's an entire realm of medicine that's beyond only the physical. So typically, psychedelic medicines have an effect on the physical brain, and they have an effect on the spiritual, social, lived experience of the human being that is the keeper of that brain. So there are also psychedelics that work for physical ailments, but a lot of it is used for mental health, mental wellness, clarity, expansion, and really ascending, like transcending what is the current state of a person's life and saying, if I wanted to catapult further and I feel stuck in this and I feel stuck in that, psychedelics are a way to potentially crack that door open if a person should.
What is the actual literal experience of psychedelics?
So depending on which psychedelic you ingest or take, there are some psychedelics that are a very brief experience, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, where a person will receive a medicine, whether it's through the nostrils or some other way, and completely go out of consciousness for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that. And then they come back with often an entirely altered experience of self, right? It's quick. Then there are some psychedelics that are very psychoactive. So those medicines, often you'll sit in a circle in a ceremony. There might be a fire in the center or not. And there's a tea that's prepared with a substance. And people sit down and start drinking their first cup. And at some point, there's a second cup and a third cup. And throughout the process, people go through psychoactive visions, experiences in the body, outside the body, what could be called as hallucinations or seeing things. There's often a purge that happens, so needing to release, you're going to the bathroom or throwing up, things like that. And often in those circles, there will be singing or chanting. So it also has a very ceremonious feel to it. And then as the medicine continues to work and then leaves, does its thing, usually at that point, the morning arrives or the morning star. And then people sit up, straighten up, stretch a little bit, wash up. And there's often fruit that's served in the morning. And people often say the fruits after a ceremony like that are like fruits that they've never tasted in their whole life. Everything is different. When I've sat in ceremonies like that, to me, it felt like words usually do not encompass it, so I'm just going to do my best. But the experience for me has been almost Gan Eden, like Garden of Eden, almost like, wow, is this what life was intended to be? If we didn't come with our human greed or human stuff and create the different things that we feel separate us or close us. So very, very, very powerful to experience that in a group and talk about community. Circles like that, you may not see each other for another year, but when you get together again, you remember. No one has forgotten anything. It's just this powerful experience. And the part where I come in with my work often is for people who finish a ceremony like that. While the morning has been beautiful, they've sat together, they've sat for hours going through different visuals, different things, getting different messages, different understandings, different answers to questions. And sometimes we need a little bit of support. Like, okay, what do I do with it? How do I implement it into my life? Because there is a pathway with psychedelics that can happen where the experience feels so good in the aftermath, and the work to integrate everything that happened during the ceremony is so intense. It's like, oh wait, so now I have to actually do things differently in my life or make certain changes or make certain adjustments, like, let me rather do another ceremony. So there is that potential for a person kind of going for the ceremony again and again and again and again, leaving out the integration work. And I've worked with people in my practice who have had that experience, and it's almost like a person showing up drained, like a zombie dragging a sack of diamonds that they never learned how to use and integrate and create into the jewelry that they want. So it's like, I'm so drained and I have all these diamonds. Is there anything we can do? And then we can do heavy integration work. So the preparation and integration and the appreciation of life as the ultimate psychedelic, I, from myself as, giving a clinical opinion, I think all of these things are crucial elements in having a successful journey that actually impacts your life in a very constructive, intentional way. Now, at the same time, from the perspective of everything is as it should be, if a person is going through 10, 15, 20 ceremonies a year without doing integration, okay, maybe that's what you need. Like, there isn't a big moral person standing on a mountain saying, do this, do that, this is right, this is wrong. In my practice, the clinical modalities that I use and the clinical orientations that I use when it comes to psychedelic integration is a lot more focused on the preparation, carrying oneself through the journey as best as possible, and then really doing the integration, really tapping into life itself as the container for this experience. A reminder that life itself is deeply precious and so fleeting, much like any psychedelic experience.
So, where in all of that do we come to speaking in Hasidic Yiddish? Are Hasidic Jews doing psychedelic ceremonies? What's happening in that scene?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say Hasidic Jews are doing mostly what most other people do. They're just wearing white shirts and black pants while they're doing it. So life will life. And it's a thing.
Do they take on, does it take on a special flavor for Hasidic Jews? Like, does it have a religious seeking or seeking in the context of being in such a closed community or or a secretive element?
So the uniqueness of ceremonies in the Hasidic communities would be that the music is often geared more towards what people in the Hasidic community grew up with. So when I've sat with medicine with someone who also grew up in a Hasidic community, what was really powerful for me was, while journeying with the medicine, to sing prayers that I knew as a kid and to sing songs and to sing in Yiddish, and to like, these things are like, wow, like combining this powerful experience with this powerful coziness of home.
Which song?
Anything from Eitz Chaim Hi to Ana B'Koyach to Shabbos Miros to Hamalach HaGoyel, you name it. And essentially, this person that I've sat with medicine with is always reminding us that what we do this for is to pray. We get into that heightened state, not only to have this really powerful experience and to have the morning after. These are all great things, but essentially we're sitting here together and we're praying and we're singing and we're letting ourselves elevate to a place and go there and make moves. So often in traditional ceremonies, there's different chants and different languages, which is a deep respect to the traditions and people that have held this with the sacredness almost that we hold the Torah. Kaviyachol. I don't know how to make the lahavdil. I don't know how to make that. But
yeah.
the sacredness with which we hold our traditions, there are groups of people that have held the traditions of these medicines and the chants. So there's a lot of respect given to that. And then to make it more culturally geared towards the people who are sitting here by singing songs of prayer is a very unique thing that is found in circles like this. And when you asked about the religious seeking, so what's interesting is if a person has grown up knowing that there needs to be someone in the lead, a rabbi dictating or a rabbi telling me what to do, or a rav, someone telling me what to do, what sometimes can happen in terms of psychological development is that a person has less of an awareness of self, of what is my guidance system? What do I want to do this way or that way? So if a person has that developmental thing that they still need to work through, what could happen is the person like that goes to ceremony and looks at the person who's pouring the medicine, let's say, and it's like, oh, this is now my new, they're not going to say rabbi because like I don't need a rabbi right now. Look at me, I'm doing all this cool stuff. But that wiring of I need someone to be the person, the guide, the leader.
Mhm.
So that could happen. And again, if it does, great, that's part of the journey. That's it. Like we can't avoid what's ours. We
Uh-huh.
can't, if that's something that a person has to work through, it'll come up until it's worked through. So that is something, I don't know if I would call it a danger. I would say that's a fair possibility that could
Uh-huh.
happen, simply because of the wiring. And in terms of secretive, I don't know. I don't get the feel that it's a very hidden thing.
How common do you think it is? Like, how many people in Kirishol do you think know about psychedelics?
I think a lot more than we think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, fewer maybe than in Brooklyn, but just for another year, 2 or 3. I could always,
Are there more men than women during it?
in the Hasidic communities, I would say a bit more men than women, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Essentially, it boils down to choice, but I think the choice is impacted by a lot of things in the community being more of a given for men and more of work for women. So driving, let's say, it's a given for a man, a woman. I think this at this point in time, like you could technically drive in Kiryas as a woman, but it's more work. And in general, for in the community, I think there is more of a culture of a boys' club. Men can go out and men can go do this and do that, whereas women are typically in the role of being home with the kids, taking care of things. And it has been culturally like that, I think, for a really long time. So with that as the background, then it's not only going to hang out with some friends at shul on Thursday night, but it's going a psychedelic journey. I think the men get quite protective. I don't know if this is something my mother, my wife, my sister should do, right? Because again, there is a cultural element of the men having a say, what the woman should do. And this is not to paint it as negative or positive, but it's more an understanding of the deep desire for masculine protection that has resulted sometimes in a certain strand of patriarchal experience that a
Mhm.
lot of women do experience in the community. And I do understand in the root of how the community was formed that the shirish, the roots of that, in many ways, is this deep divine desire to protect women after what happened in World War II, and
Mhm.
a lot of male guilt of I couldn't protect my wife, I couldn't protect my daughter, I couldn't protect my mother. So those that survived come through and they say like, I'm going to do anything to protect this woman, to
Mhm.
protect the women, the precious women that are still here. And sometimes it could go a little overboard. Sometimes the effect is not in the same flavor as the intention. So I think those
Is
elements play a role.
is that, for instance, worked through in a treatment after a psychedelic ceremony?
Which part?
Um, Unpacking with men their assumptions about should they be telling women what to do, and should they be telling their women, well, this is not something that I feel is safe for you, but it is okay for me.
Yeah, so typically if it comes up in their journey, it comes up. And if it comes up in their journey, it's already coming up in their life, and it's already a conversation between them and their wife. But often it doesn't even come up on the journey, and it's not even something that's spoken in this whole generation for that family, for that couple, and it's only their daughter who then has that conversation with her husband. So it's not a given that it would come up, and a lot of people live in this culture, in this context, day by day and day after day, and not necessarily shaking or moving any of the norms. And then there are many who are very much shaking and moving the norms. So it's very much case by case. Typically, if someone is finding themselves already in a psychedelic ceremony, for the most part, there's already some shift happening in their lives, either as a couple, right, both the husband and wife, or just themselves, or something is already open that made them aware or curious about this idea of sitting with a medicine.
Just to put this out there, women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, what's the connection between that? Because a lot of Hasidic women are very often during their fertile years in either of these two positions. Well, how does that relate to psychedelic?
I always say for stuff like that, it's a case by case conversation, depending on which medicine, depending on how far along, depending on so many factors. So there isn't necessarily a blanket answer. Looking back at different traditional tribes, they've had all sorts of different traditions when it came to mothers who are pregnant or breastfeeding. So it's not a one answer fits all at all when it comes to this. It's very case by case.
Do people say, well, I feel like I'm losing faith, I'm doubting the system, I'm going to do psychedelics to try to regain it?
Some probably. Yeah, the reasons for seeking psychedelics are as diverse as the people seeking it, like very much so. There are common themes of seeking something, a reminder of something bigger than me. But what that is, or like, yeah, it's so vast.
I thought people do psychedelics if they want to solve a literal problem in their lives. Like, is this relationship good for me? I'm going to do psychedelics and it'll be revealed.
I might call that wishful thinking.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I'm just asking how naive I am. Like, that's not what people go into psychedelic
Well,
thinking.
okay, so when I say the wishful thinking part is that's what I keep coming back to, the psychedelic of life. Nothing can save us from ourselves, from bechira, which is choice, making a decision. What am I choosing? What am I choosing? What do I really know? What is my right? What is my deepest truth? And can I make a decision? Can I live with the consequences? Whatever it is. A relationship, a job, a business, a decision, moving somewhere. That's the work of the psychedelic of earth. But psychedelic medicines, depending on which ones, there are some medicines that are very much about processing active things going on in life, and different insights come through. There's like almost like a different channel that's open. So different clarity comes through. I recently had a very practical thing that I sat with in a medicine journey, and it was so clear, like something like an answer that felt so simple, but somehow had been out of my reach. But it wasn't so much I was going to the medicine to say, okay, now you give me the answer. Because that, once again, is a person giving their power away. And that's something we never want to do. It's so sacred. It's so sacred when we're in touch with our voice and our power. So, but there are insights that come through because our brain, the physical part of how psychedelics work is that the brain's natural or ingrained way of thinking, right? Our brains have these, like, imagine like a ski track, like the track that keeps going, keeps taking skiers down, that ends up being very grooved, very deep. So during a psychedelic journey, all of that or a lot of that is kind of scattered. It's open, it's fresh. All of these new potentials exist. So whereas in the before, I would have maybe thought of this issue and gone to the same pathways, the same slopes, the same pathway down the slope. Here suddenly something else came through that resonated in deep truth, and then I kind of went through it afterwards as well, like, oh, is this, yeah, and it still felt accurate. And it's like, oh, that was a nice insight, but still remembering that came from me to me, from source to me, that it's the medicine is a medicine, it's a helper, it's a tool, it's a permission slip that gives us, we give ourselves permission through it to access something that is arguably always there. I will also add one thing in terms of big life decisions. It's often recommended in the midst of psychedelic journeying to hold off on any huge life decisions. Like if a person comes out of a psychedelic journey and they're like, it's so clear to me, I need to get divorced. Sometimes a psychedelic integration therapist will say, let's breathe. Perhaps, but let's see. So big, huge life altering decisions, it's often recommended that sit with it for a moment before rushing through it the week after a ceremony. And again, if someone does make a big life decision and a life altering decision right afterwards, that's part of your journey. It's okay. Once it's done, it's done.
So one final thing about Hasidim and psychedelics, I think the first way I heard that Hasidim are doing psychedelics when I started to hear about it was someone said to me, oh, there are some people who do psychedelic ceremonies and become so frummed out, become so extreme that afterwards they have marital problems because they're like coming back home with these extreme religious ideas that seem to be awakened in these ceremonies. That was like gossipy version that trickled down to me about this, about how Hasidic Jews might integrate that intense experience into almost like an extremism, a zealotry that can become like problematic in the practicality of daily life.
Well, then I guess that's a problem they have to deal with.
Do you find that to be true though?
What I find to be true is psychedelics reveal what's already there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, meaning if psychedelics reveal this problem, or what's perceived as a problem, or that problem, or this, I guess this is the current problem of the day. Meaning, even if that does occur, I don't know that there's a big trend of that happening. Again, I may not be aware. All right, then that's now a thing that this couple or this family will work through or not, and choice never leaves, right? So, okay.
By the way, you go by Bruchi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're one of the only ex-Monroers who didn't fancify your name into like Bracha or something. I love
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Just in
Bruchi.
Israel, sometimes I'll go by bracha. Um,
Uh,
but even there, my close circle of people is it's bruchi or bruchi.
very sweet. So, where are you at with life now so we can wrap up and let people know a little bit where they can find out more about you? Is it true that you're writing a book?
It is true, more than one.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes. One is related to my life story. I don't know yet if it'll be a published book or just a prayer that I write from me to source. And the other one is a theory of psychological development and collective development, which is a very exciting book, both for people who are just curious about their own development and their own self healing journeys, as well as for people who are in the clinical fields of therapy and psychology. In my work, while I do psychedelic integration as an element of my work, I'm primarily a family therapist. I work with children and parents, a lot of people in the actual from Hasidic community. I have a deep love for the nuances that come through in the family setting, big family settings, and parents truly seeking to do the best by their kids while simultaneously sharing tradition and wanting to put forth a certain life and at the same time wanting their child's wholesome development. So it's tremendous joy for me to be able to give back to the community in this way. So that's a big part of my work. I would say over 50% of my practice is parents and children, parenting groups. It's more self-parenting groups because it's the work that I do continues to bring it back to the adult in the room. It's very powerful work. So that's another element of my work. And a lot of that work is informing the developmental theory book. And yeah, music is a big part of my life, both professionally and personally. So that's something, if people find me, they might see me with an instrument in my hand.
And also pets, a love for animals.
Oh, a deep love for all animals. Yes,
Are
beautiful
you
beings.
vegetarian?
I have an appreciation for it. I eat meat sometimes at this point in my life. I think it's an ebb and a flow. I've had times where I didn't. I've had times where it was more fish, but there's certainly a continuous shift, like especially living more in nature and being exposed to different things. And I think it boils down to me the same thing we started off with, as whatever is current doesn't mean it is the thing. If this
Yeah.
is what is being taught, if this is what is being shown, even if this is what I'm feeling, it doesn't mean this is it. This is it right now. Okay.
By the way, I didn't mean to ask with any judgment. You just mentioned it earlier, so I thought maybe you're vegetarian. But
Yeah, no worries.
yeah. My last question is, do you observe traditions? What of the traditions do you observe today?
I always like to say the traditions observe me.
I see. Okay.
They really do. And I have a deep, loving relationship with pretty much any of the deeply rooted traditions, especially those that I see represented in the Torah readings. And, you know, when especially living in Israel, it's like, wow, I'm walking the path, I'm in it. So a deep love, a deep appreciation, and really I feel observed by them and feel love for them, for these traditions that have been so deftly passed down generation to
Mhm.
I have a lot of awe and respect for all of it.
Beautiful. Well, I'm gonna link in the video description for people to be able to find you. Thank you so much, Brophy, for such a lovely discussion today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone on YouTube and on the podcast as well. Thank you. Bye bye.